Hello, Assalamu alaikum everybody. Hope you're all safe, sound, and healthy. And now let's just talk about what we have, and keeping all that in mind, let's try to understand the limitations despite all we have, or in spite of what we have, right? I think it's necessary. It's necessary to talk about things that we have in order to better understand the situation. And it is necessary to understand the fact because as you know, in my previous podcast, I have been constantly questioning their lack of usage of the canal network, right? Especially, I'll tell you why, especially because they started releasing water into the canals on the 28th of this month, which is literally 2 days ago. And that is when India announced that, okay, brothers, we're all drowning here and it's time to open the floodgates. So get ready. And obviously, India does not just announce it within hours. This is something that we go through every monsoon. Remember, every monsoon that we have rainfall, we go through this whole process where they give a notification. And as far as I know, the notification is given at least 48 to 72 hours prior, okay? Because they allow you time, because it is common sense and it is part of the whole process. It's part of the courtesy. It's part of the professional process as well. India cannot just open the floodgates like that without warning. They can't. So obviously we also in turn have to take measures so that we can let the water pass through again, remember? So now, keeping all of that in mind, as I said, despite the fact that India was behaving as if it wanted to hoard all the water that came its way, and it made all these big dams, which everybody was complaining about how those dams were strategically placed where they could literally cut off the flow of water to Pakistan, which again, as I said, was a bit silly for both the countries to even think that that's possible, because voila, this year's monsoon is a very good example of why I said that this was a very stupid thing to think. Because climate change, remember, one year if you have an almost dry monsoon, get ready to have a torrential rainfall of monsoon, as in you will have a stormy torrential monsoon the next year. It's understood, and that year will carry the capacity worth of 2 years worth of rain, if not more. Again, common sense, right? So we were expecting rains. That's my biggest problem here, is you cannot tell me we weren't expecting rains. Yes, I understand that, okay, fine, this was too much, but again, why was it, how again, we already saw that the glaciers were melting. This is an ongoing thing that has been going on for more than a year, and it was actually already understood, not even more than a year. Actually, it's been going on for a few years. I mean, bit by bit, and then every now and then a full heave-ho came in through, and then again bit by bit. So the glaciers have been melting for quite a number of years now, and that is one of the reasons why Imran Khan started the holistic approach, as in, reforestation, as in the deforestation that had occurred in the northern areas, to once again plant all those trees, the billion tree project. That is crucial. It is very crucial. And no matter what research you do, you will find out that yes, environmentally setting in barriers, natural barriers, which we call the holistic approach, is crucial. Okay? Keeping in mind the climate change, because as they say that this year has proved of the fact that super floods, when they occur, then many of your already designed infrastructure, as I'm just saying that India, you can see how India thought that it could just get away with it all, but at the end of the day, its dams couldn't even contain this amount of water. It had to let go, right? Otherwise, who doesn't need this water, right? We all need water. And we need to store water. But as you can see, when water keeps on coming down from the sky like this, and then you have your, multifaceted flood sources, you're doomed. Okay, as is the case with Pakistan, where, as I said, it's not just the rains, but it is the glaciers melting. So that's the northern areas thing, and that is their whole story, the tragedy there. And now the deforestation continues all the way through Punjab, which is essentially an agricultural province, which is why, again, deforestation here can be very, very crucially harmful. And then you go all the way to Sindh, where they have already faced, and they're still facing, and every year they face, lack of water. They face famine and drafts. Every now and then. It has become a very frequent occurrence, you can say, in the interior parts of Sindh, right? Again, because why receding groundwater levels? Again, why? Because all this rain that we could store to keep our groundwater levels up and up, it all goes out into the sea. It's wasted, completely wasted, right? So again, let us see what we have. And then we will understand. Because if you look at the numbers of what we have, as you know, we have the largest canal network in the world, okay, or one of the largest in any case, right? And now the problem is, as I said, they always choose to release flood water or river water into the canals as a last resort. Now, why? Okay, again, first of all, as you know, as I said, one of the most useful things that a canal system can do is redistribute flood water, from the rivers, or, basically it can redistribute flood water and minimize flood damage. But here's the thing. Our canals, especially the ones in the urban areas, like the ones that we are living near, they do not have the capacity, obviously, because they're in urban areas. So they do not have the capacity to bear the sheer volume of the water, especially at the speed at which, no matter how much you try to control it, right? At the speed at which the water is coming. So even if they try to control it, if the volume is unbalanced in any form, disaster can occur, right? That which is overflowing canals, right? And it kind of happened recently, and that is when they were beginning to release water. So we heard the news that, in a particular area of Punjab, the canal overflowed and flooded the nearby areas. And that was again because when they were trying to ease water into the canal network, probably they kind of overdid it and it overflowed, and so they had to stop it again. So as you know, in this season they always keep the canals dry, okay? It is deliberate. Whenever it's monsoon season, they keep the canals dry for two reasons. First of all, right before that, they do their maintenance, which is the cleaning and everything of the canal. And then the second thing is that they know that it's monsoon season, which means that you will need the canals for any emergency measures. Now, the difference again here, although they can utilize some of the canals, from what I'm understanding, although they can utilize some of the canals as a multi-purpose, source of distribution of flood from the river, some parts of the canal cannot be safely used because, as I said, they fear that the infrastructure will not be able to hold the volume of the water, and it might actually cause more damage, either to the infrastructure of the canal itself or the areas around it. Now, I have finally found out what this whole caboodle was about the local authorities announcing that they might have to release water into the canal in the next couple of days. No matter how much research I did, and no matter how much I tried to find out, nowhere is it mentioned that this is the flood water. Again, as I said, because to them it is kind of dangerous to balance the volume of the flood water, especially when trying to ease that water into the urban canals infrastructure. So the urban canal right now, as in the canal that we are living near, the announcement that they've made of releasing some water into it is the irrigation water. It's not the river flooded water. It's not the overflowing water that is coming from the river. It's not the flood water. It is the water that is to be opened for irrigation purposes. Okay, so that thing got cleared. And again, my problem is, although I understand that they try to use the canals as a last resort to ease the flood through, to minimize the damage. And this is something they had to do, obviously. They started it on the 28th, and since then they have done it bit by bit. As I said, that is the way you do it. You release a certain amount of water into the canals, and then you let that flow, and then you wait, and then you release again certain, so that it doesn't overflow and no danger is posed, and you can drain. In a way, you're draining that flood so that it shouldn't overwhelm the cities and the areas around. But unfortunately, and this is the CHENAB, that is the thing. The where did they do it? They did it near the CHENAB and the Sutlej rivers. That is where they suddenly started emptying or lowering the volume of the rivers by releasing them into the canals. Okay, they did not as such release much of the Ravi water into the canals, from what I understood. They tried to release they started to release a bit of it, but I think they didn't do as much as they were obliged to with the CHENAB and Sutlej rivers. But then again, here comes my question. The cities that they were saying that they were going to avoid getting flooded by releasing the water into the canal system, why did those cities still get flooded? Their answer, it seems to be, is that the overwhelming volume of water and the flow of water is what made it difficult. So that even though we were releasing some of the water into the canals, it's the impact of the flood was so much that we couldn't control it completely, and so it still spilled out. The flood still continued to move and spill out into the cities. As we know, more than 17,000 villages have been drowned, submerged, right? Imagine what that means. How many people and their animals are now homeless, and who they have once again faced so much loss, and this is not just the poor people. Again, the poor people, the villagers, the farmers, their lands, and then you move on to the cities, and then this. So it has been very bad this year. Okay, it has been very bad again, which makes us question the fact that that we are a country that is prone to having heavy monsoons, and we know that there is climate change, because Imran Khan kept on and on talking about how we needed to take measures, and he had started taking measures. And our basic problem is that when this government came, they stopped all those measures. Okay. And see, I'll tell you why it's so frustrating. So our existing water infrastructure, we have dams. Now, as of 2025, Pakistan is recorded to have over 150 dams of various sizes, with major ones, major ones like Turbela and Mangla, right? The additional mega projects like the Daimar Bhasha, which we just call the Bhasha Dam, are under construction, which, if you remember, this was Imran Khan had started this, right? And so we have that. Now imagine, you'll just read the number 150 dams of various sizes and you think, what? We have so many dams in this small country and we still couldn't deal with the flood? Okay, let's move on. Canal network. As you know, we have one of the world's largest irrigation networks. This is the Indus Basin Irrigation System, the IBIS, which is our canal network. And it comprises major reservoirs. Now, this is what you need to understand why I kept on and on wondering why they were not utilizing the canal network. Why? Because the canal network comprises of major reservoirs, barrages, link canals, and watercourses. You see my point here? Okay, now let's move on. Now, rainwater harvesting. Okay, as we know, these systems were begun by Imran Khan. Okay, and these were mostly, pilot projects, as you know, because he just began them, and he basically started in Lahore and Islamabad. Again, as you can see, look at his foresight, that even he could see, as I said, anybody who has the common sense could see that what was coming. And even he could see that, Lahore and Islamabad could suddenly be prone to flooding. And also, we need all this rainwater. We need to harvest it, This is something that people like us have been talking about for such a long time. And to us, it was a relief that we finally had a prime minister who was on the same page with us. In fact, at a higher level, really, because he was contemplating so much more, you know, and the steps that he was planning to take. As you can see, this is again another thing, because these rainwater harvesting units, which I call rain collection units, these were both underground, and I think they also had some people, I think some of them also began rooftop, although as far as I know, Imran Khan's projects were mainly underground storage tanks to capture the rainwater runoff, right? This helps in mitigating urban flooding, and it also recharges, once again, remember, groundwater. Okay, now, according to the so-called experts, now here's the thing. The experts say that relying solely on more dams is not a complete or even feasible solution. So these are the limitations that they're citing for adding more infrastructure. According to them, we have the sheer volume of water that's coming from extreme monsoon rains, the glacial melt, the upstream releases in this year alone, this monsoon alone, has exceeded the capacity of all our existing dams and river channels. Imagine again why we're making such a hue and cry. You would think 150 dams, why can't we hold? Look at India. Look at how many dams India has been making recently. How much water could they hold? No. You see, this is why we say that you need a multifaceted solution, one of which is the holistic, which is the most important and crucial, because it actually does 80 to 85% of your work is done by the environment. When you create that environment, when you bring back those trees, when you have the natural embedding on the soil level that helps to quickly absorb and seep all the water, these things are crucial in the northern areas as well. And the northern areas, there is a reason why there are laws in the northern areas against cutting down trees, and now I think you can see why. Okay, then we have a problem of decentralized flooding, according to the experts. So that means that the flooding in Pakistan is not just the result of river overflow, as we know. It is caused by flash floods in the mountainous regions, which has occurred this time, very, very much so, although it occurs every time, but not with the intensity with which it has occurred this time. And then you have the urban runoff from poor drainage, which is one of our major problems when we always talk about code violations initiated by the local authorities themselves. Like Karachi, again, why does Karachi always get flooded when it rains, as in their roads always, why? Very, very bad code violations, especially to do with the drainage, right? And then we have the overflowing hill torrents. I'm coming back to the decentralized flooding, okay? So I'll repeat. We have, especially this year, we're concentrating on this year and noticing all these, okay? So we have had flash floods in the mountainous regions, then we've had the river overflow, obviously, then we've got the urban runoff from poor drainage, and then we've got the overflowing hill torrents, none of which can be controlled by large dams. Okay, now, then we have obviously the politics, which has been a major factor, politics and corruption, a major factor in interfering with mega dams, as we know. And as we know, under Imran Khan, the whole country was actually united in making the Bhasha Dam, and they were like, yes, please. That time, people didn't even bother with these politicians, and people did not even allow the politicians to talk against the dams. Right? So, as I said, also, if you have a corrupt government like the ones now, even if they talk about making dams, the reason why we find it highly suspect is, number one, we don't know that they're going to make them where they should be made without disrupting the ecosystem, which is very crucial. Okay, again, remember, displacement of people and the right amount of compensation given to them, that is also crucial. And then them using bad quality materials, so that that dam will be a forever maintenance headache, because they will pocket the largest amount of money and use minimal amount bad quality materials and make a dam that we'd rather not have. Because they've done that with existing amazing roads. They broke those roads down, they broke down their sewage system, they broke down everything, and when they remade those roads, they just effed everything up. And that is another reason why we have poor drainage. It's not like we always had poor drainage. In so many areas, the roads were made perfectly with snow drains and everything. Everything was completely correctly placed, and then they came, and just to get kickbacks, they just uprooted all those roads, they uprooted their drainage systems, and they just laid out, roads of the lowest quality possible, disrupting the previous drainage system in the process. So that has added to it. So what is the then comprehensive strategy for minimal flood damage, keeping in mind what we already have, right? So a more effective plan, accordingly, if all the experts sit together and discuss, it would be you have a mix of structural and non-structural measures. Again, something that Imran Khan already talked about and already had begun, right? For example, targeted dam construction, which I already said, where we build localized dams, which I have referred to as, sort of, again, kind of like reservoirs, as in they can work as dams and reservoirs, right? And these, when you make smaller localized dams, like we already have, as you know, we have 150 dams of different sizes, small, and so if you keep on making smaller localized dams in strategic areas that are, that will not disrupt your ecosystem. In fact, it will aid your existing ecosystem. It will not disrupt the people, the population much, And what happens is that you can build multiple of these, just like how you can build multiple of the rain harvesting units underground, right? Even ground level is okay, in my opinion. I mean, so mainly you can build underground to, to maintain the groundwater levels, and then you can also have ground level units to collect rain or floods or, similar sort of, basically water collection. Again, in my language, I would refer to them as reservoirs, right? But the thing is, when you have localized smaller dams, they are technically as well as financially viable, right? And again, you can have these projects on hill torrents and flood generating nalas, which we call in Urdu nalas, to manage localized flash floods. Okay, then again, if, as I said in my previous podcast, you need to work on upgrading the existing canal system if you feel, because as I said, the canal system was not even built by the British. No. It is the original ancient canal system made by the Indus Valley civilization, and it was added to and developed more by the British. Okay, so it means we need to upgrade it again. Because as I said, when you were arguing with them as to why they are not utilizing an otherwise substantial distribution network, your canal network, to distribute the excess water and to help ease the floods, and to help reduce and minimize damage, why are they keeping it as a last resort? Is because, as they claim, is that they are afraid that the infrastructure is not enough to carry the sheer volume of it. Okay, but again, I would still argue that even though these canals are mainly purposed for irrigation, as I said, canals are always mainly purposed for irrigation, but they can still be used because, as I said, one of their basic uses is diversion of flood water. So for them to say that no, actually it is not feasible to use, especially the urban canals, to manage flood distribution, okay, upgrade the existing barrages and flood protection infrastructure, which again, as I said, is okay, you've seen that you've got barrages. You think that maybe this time, for example, the flood showed that it could literally overflow, to such an extent where it can just go over the barrages without even breaking the barrages as such, but they're just going over them. Maybe you could work on the height and the width as well, like reinforce the barrages, and the existing infrastructure that you have, right? So especially the critical ones like the Trimu barrage, right, which has been impacted by sedimentation, as we know, which is one of the main reasons why the flooding couldn't be contained. Okay, and as I've constantly talked about this, again, the rainwater collection units, the more they are, the better it is, especially in urban areas and flood prone regions throughout the country. Even rural communities. In fact, rural communities can, as I said, that will again help additionally with the groundwater level, and it will help with their harvesting. It can help the soil in so many ways. So it's a critical source, especially when as we see that climate change is such where we can even see a dry year like last year. Even throughout the monsoon, we didn't have the kind of rain we needed, so we were basically in drought, so that helps. Now, if you come to the non-structural and policy-based measures, there is again the thing that we keep on talking about, and that is enforcement of land use planning regulations to prevent encroachment in construction on riverbanks and natural. Again, what we keep on and on talking about. Do not allow anybody. In fact, this is where I'm going to come back to. I'm sure people must have complained because I have constantly said that Aleem Khan, is not. He's a friend of the current government, and he should be considered as part of the current political parties, right? He is. Please check it up. I mean, I know and look at how vicious and malicious the current government is that they're throwing him to the dogs now, suddenly reminding the world that he was part of PTI, he was part of Imran Khan's political party. You know what? There were so many people who were part of Imran Khan's party. Where are they now? They are now integrated back to where they originally came from. Yes. The current government, the current Punjab government, which is illegally sat on our heads, they're integrated back into them, and the army that created this newfangled, weird-ass sort of a political party that it thought that it would take all the traitors from PTI, set them up in that party, and create a sort of a political storm out of it, which fell flat because I think people don't seem to understand the people in the government and army, that is. I think they just don't understand that the public of Pakistan, we don't give a frack about the people who claim to be of PTI or not. We're not voting for them. We're voting for Imran Khan. If Imran Khan tells us vote for them, we'll vote for them. If they leave his side, they've lost our votes. They've completely committed political suicide, basically. And he's one of those. And I'll tell you why, because again, as I said, they were trying to pin it on Imran Khan, saying that, as I just gave the numbers, the years, and in my just previously uploaded podcast, which I did just a few hours ago. If you listen to that, you would see that this Park View society that they're now attacking and trying to put Imran Khan's name on, this society was approved of and built in 2010. And in fact, even before that, it was already licensed under the name River Edge. And then he changed the name and got it re-registered in 2010. So the first time it was launched, it was registered under the name River Edge in 2006. Imran Khan's government was not there in 2006. And then again, as I said, he renamed it as Park View and got it registered and launched in 2010. And that time, who was he working with? This government that you have now and the army. Imran Khan was again nowhere in sight, okay? When Imran Khan came into the government, his major problem with Aleem Khan was that Imran Khan did not accept the validity of that society or any of the societies, any of the 47 societies that were illegally registered, licensed by the same Ravi Urban Authority Development that put them on the list of illegal societies. I mean, after giving them licenses and registrations and technical licenses, then they neatly put them on their illegal list as well. So Imran Khan was against all of those societies because he was against utilizing the riverbank and the area around the riverbank that could possibly be flooded anytime, because again, remember, we've talked in great detail about the necessity of leaving that area unoccupied by population, which right now wouldn't have been affected at all if they had followed the rules, if they had followed the law. So they had, in fact, Imran Khan was not at all happy and he was not ready to accept all of this. And as you can see, Aleem Khan is not even with PTI anymore. He is with the current government. This is why I keep on and on saying that he is a friend of the current government. In fact, listen, I'll tell you, there are many businessmen, in Pakistan who have played both sides. They will be on the side of anybody who's coming into power. They work both sides. Okay, they will join any party that they feel that, okay, this is the party that's coming into power, let's work with them and take benefits. Because Imran Khan's government refused to give him the benefits he thought he would get, the kind of benefits that he got from this current government in the previous years. So at the end, they had to split anyway. And as you can see, he very easily split as soon as Imran Khan was ousted and put in jail. He's one of those people who very easily betrayed Imran Khan and went over to this government. So pray tell me, how is he of the PTI? Yeah, as I say, do not mess with us on these things. So, okay. Now, early warning systems. As I said, one of the biggest problems that Parkview faced was when the water reached 2 kilometers away from the society, that is when the authorities decided to alert them that, oh, you're going to get flooded. Seriously? Seriously. They need to stop pocketing all that money and actually spend it where it's supposed to be spent, and that is in investing in strengthening the national early warning systems for floods. It's crucial. It's absolutely crucial. Okay? And obviously, climate change adaptation, which again was what Imran Khan had already started. He had started his long-term policies, keeping in mind the changes in rainfall patterns, glacier melting and everything. And he was beginning the projects accordingly. Notice that all these projects that right now the experts are saying that we should have put in place, every single one of those projects were initiated by Imran Khan, and they were shut down by this government first thing when they came, apart from emptying the treasury. And now, again, upgraded drainage systems, which is something that this government excels in destroying, as I've already mentioned a million times. So tell me, what is it that I have complained about in my previous podcast, in all of my previous 5 podcasts? What is it that I have said that is wrong? Pray tell. What is it that I have said is wrong? When I asked why is it that they never used the canal, the canal network, okay, fine. They seem to give a valid reason, that actually the infrastructure is, especially in the urban areas, because after all, the canal runs through urban areas and through villages and through cultivated areas and through, harvest lands, farmlands. Okay. But what, again, I'll say this again. You knew that the time would come when India would have to open its floodgates. Why did you have to wait for India to announce that it was opening its floodgates and then wait for them to actually open their floodgates and then start releasing water from your rivers into the canal? You should have started releasing water bit by bit when the rainfall began and our floods had already begun to be accumulated, as soon as you saw your river water level rise to a tipping point. Our rivers were already overflowing, isn't it? Before India announced that, oh, here's more. Our rivers had already come to a tipping point. As soon as you knew that, okay, this is heavy rain, these are in fact torrential rains, these are going to be ongoing rains, that we can be flooded, especially if India is obliged to open its gates, and even if not, but there is potential flooding ahead. So let us ease down the volume of the rivers before they rise to such an alarming point. If they had started easing little by little, little by little into the canal, believe me, the lands wouldn't have gotten flooded. Okay? Why keep it for a last resort, is what I'm saying. Why? I mean, at the end, you had to use it. At the end, you had to use it. Why wait for India to throw tons of water into your already overflowing tipping dams and tipping rivers in order for you to now realize that, oh, okay, let's start releasing water into the canals? That's not, sorry, but that's not effective. You should have started releasing bit by bit, and you know what, your canals infrastructure wouldn't even be compromised if you had started earlier. That is my argument here. I understand that you feel that no, because they are essentially for irrigation and they are not built to handle the flow or the volume of flood water, no matter how much we try to ease it into, okay, oh, fine, okay, let's agree with all of that. But at the end, you did it. It worked, right? You've been doing it for the past 2 days on and off. It's working, right? So what's the problem here? Again, it would have been easier if you started with lower levels, if you started when you already had lower levels and you knew they were going to rise alarmingly, because hello, everybody knew. Again, this is no excuse. Everybody knew that we would be expecting an alarming rate of, of rainfall, because what with the glaciers melting in the northern areas, when we saw what was happening to the northern areas, and when we saw how the rain was pouring down here in Punjab and in Sindh and everywhere else throughout Pakistan, then you should have listened to the weather department seriously, because they had already told you to expect this. You cannot deny that fact. You should have started easing out the water while it was still within your control, while it was still below the alarming volume, And then, you know what? When India opened up its floodgates, your rivers would have been able to handle that water. Enough for you to again start strategically releasing bit by bit. And this whole flood situation, although you will keep on arguing, I know, and keep on giving me logics and expert opinions saying that no, despite all of that, we would still have had, fine, obviously we have floods every single time it rains during the monsoon. The point is, in these past 70 years, did any of you bother to take these concrete measures? Add to your dams bit by bit, localized dams, add to small reservoirs bit by bit, add to rain harvesting bit by bit. It would have cost you less money anyway if you kept on adding to it over the years, upgrading your canal network so that it could also bear the flow of flood water if ever needed, And then again, working on the holistic approach, working on, on your SOPs, But you did none of that. And even now in these past 2 years, again, that is the problem. You did none of that. So we see what we have. We see what can be added to. We see that we had all these years to add to it. Okay, fine, forget all those years. These last 2 years that you were sitting here yapping about Imran Khan, you could have used the money that you actually used in order to take your trips abroad. Maryam Nawaz traveling to Japan and Singapore and Hong Kong, and the army chief going to America, on whose expense? It's our expense. All that money that you just wasted in these 2 years, all that money that you wasted on yourselves, if you had put even a fraction of it into these little things, believe me, this flood would have been minimized, no matter how much you like to call it a super flood. No. Remember 88, At least after 88, people should have realized that, oh, there is such a thing like a super flood. Let's work on it. Did anybody work on it? No, nobody did. That is our problem here. Again, once again, I've tried to give you numbers, so that you know what we're working with. I've given you the amount of dams we've got, the canal network, we've got the RWH, which is, the rain harvesting, units, and then we've got all of that, right? You tell me now. You tell me, wasn't it actually pretty simple and inexpensive if we had just continued to do little by little, of all of this, and which Imran Khan began? Again, if he was allowed to stay, by now he would have completed many of these small projects, and this flood would have been contained. Believe me, this flood, and we all know it. Actually, everybody knows it, and that's why everybody's pissed off. Again, I would say, fine, I understand why you are reluctant to use the urban canals, as in the canal, especially the canal here that is going through where we live. And, first of all, because this part doesn't even, it doesn't even come under the flood path. Okay. But again, the way things are going, you never know. And second, this is strictly irrigation purposes, and you're afraid that if you try to ease the flood water in through, then there might be some infrastructural damage. Okay, accepted. But then you have part of the canal. Again, we already have existing in our canal network barrages, reservoirs, and then these are link canals. You could have added to them. Add more to it, upgrade it, and enforce its infrastructure so that it can hold and help distribute excess water. All these little things. Again, you had so many years to work on them. Forget all those years. You had these 2 years to work on them. You didn't want to work on them. You should have allowed Imran Khan to work on it at least before you came in. Give us a break somewhere. Well, this is me signing out. Khuda Hafiz.